Hello everyone, and you're watching Uzreport World News with me, Davron Jumaev. The Uzbek government has picked Deloitte, Grant Thornton and KPMG to advise it on the sale of 18 state-owned enterprises, whose assets and investment company established under the State Assets Management Agency said on Tuesday. The three consultancies will support UZ assets by providing financial, tax and legal due diligence valuation services and identifying and negotiating with potential buyers, UZ assets said in a statement. Among the assets to be sold off are majority stakes in Kafolat, one of the Central Asian nation's largest insurance companies, Quartz, the country's largest glass producer, and Tres 12, a leading construction company. Also on the privatization list are oil and gas equipment maker Kokand Mechanical Plant, Uzbek Chemical Plant, Fergana Oil Refinery, Jizak Plastics, and Electric Construction Company, as well as 10 wine and spirits producers. Russian State Development Corporation VAP.RF, Gazprom Bank, and the Uzbek Surhan Gas Chemical Operating Company have signed basic indicative financing conditions for the implementation of the project for the exploration and development of the Mustaqillikning 25 yillik gas field in Uzbekistan, the press service of VAP.RF said in a statement. The project includes the construction of a gas processing plant and infrastructure facilities in Surkhan-Darya region of Uzbekistan, including the production, transportation and sale of natural gas. The total cost of the project is estimated at $1.7 billion. The loan funds of Russian financial institutions are to comprise $900 million. The M25 project is being implemented by a consortium of international investors under the terms of a production sharing agreement concluded with Uzbekistan in April 2017. The project's shareholders are Altmax Holding, Uzbekneftgaz and Gas Project Development Central Asia. Surhan Gas Chemical Operating Company acts as the operator under PSA. The M25 field is the largest currently undeveloped gas field in Uzbekistan. It has over 150 billion cubic meters of crude gas in its reserves. The design and construction of the gas processing plant is based on Shell's licensed gas purification and sulfur production technologies. Fanes Group, an international solar energy developer headquartered in Dubai, signed a power purchase agreement and investment agreement for a 200 MW AC grid-connected solar PV plant in Nurata Navoy region. The agreements between Fanes Group and the Uzbek government include the technical and commercial terms for building, owning and operating a 200 MW AC solar project. The ground-mounted project aims to significantly increase Uzbekistan's current solar installed capacity and contribute to the government's plans to boost energy generation capacity to 30 GW, including 5 GW of solar by 2030. Uzbekistan earned the Economist's title of Country of the Year in 2019, and the nation is now regarded as a rising powerhouse in Central Asia, said Martin Haupt, CEO of Fanes Group. With this agreement, Fanes Group shares the vision for Uzbekistan's clean energy ambition and reaching its climate action goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and dependency on fossil fuels. Ravnak Bank is to act as a coordinator between Fanes Group, the international developer of solar energy, and the state organizations of Uzbekistan. Russian Pharmsynthese said it was ready to invest up to $50 million in the production of oncological drugs in Uzbekistan. Vikram Singh Punia, president of the Pharmsynthese group of companies during the Innoprom Industrial Exhibition in Tashkent on Monday, noted that Russian companies were ready to create modern production of pharmaceuticals in Uzbekistan. We're ready to localize the production of oncological drugs in Uzbekistan. For this purpose, according to our calculations, we need $30 to $50 million. If there is a PPP system that guarantees the purchase of these drugs, we're ready to invest these funds and launch such production in Uzbekistan, he added. Due to the increase in the number of emails sent regarding human rights during the pandemic, a separate website was launched and the population was kept informed of the latest news. This was reported at the international webinar organized by the Authorized Person for Human Rights in the Kingdom of Thailand.
The webinar was attended by the authorized person of the Ali Majlis for Human Rights, Firuza Ishmatova, representatives of the International Institute of Ombudsmen, and ombudsmen from more than 10 countries, where the experience of foreign countries in protecting human rights and freedoms during a pandemic was studied. According to the Ombudsman of Indonesia, Muhammad Naji, the website, which was launched in April 2020, received 1,600 applications in 4 months, 83% of which were for social assistance. The Indonesian Ombudsman made extensive use of online mechanisms to address these complaints and conduct monitoring. The Ombudsman in Uzbekistan acted differently. During the spread of the disease, the authorized person of the Ali Majlis for Human Rights personally visited the objects of investigation. Firuza Ishmatova noted that the monitoring participants were provided with protective equipment, and measures were taken to eliminate the identified deficiencies. In her video message, he also spoke about the rapid and large-scale measures being taken under the leadership of the president to combat coronavirus infection.
Today, the initiative of the President of the Republic of Uzbekistan, Shavkat Mirziyoyev, large-scale measures are being taken in our country to combat coronavirus infection, which covers the whole world and causes the death of so many people. First of all, in order to prevent the penetration of and spread of a new type of coronavirus COVID-2019 on the territory of our country, to ensure a favorable sanitary and epidemiological environment and protect the health of the population, in January 2020, the decree of the President of the Republic of Uzbekistan was adopted. The decree introduced a number of restrictions in order to ensure the sanitary and epidemiological well-being and safety of the population.
In the context of the crisis, proposals were made to ensure that there are no obstacles to the use of public services by citizens, as well as to attract volunteers to assist the Ombudsman and other organizations in their work.
The Uzbek government is planning to make the circulation of non-firearms illegal. The press service of the Senate reported. Citizens are to be held responsible for the illegal possession of pneumatic and gas pistols, stun guns, signal, bladed and throwing weapons.
In the past 2020, there were no legal grounds for bringing persons to justice under 2,000 identified cases related to the possession of non-firearms without permission. This creates an opportunity for citizens to freely circulate non-firearms, the Senate said. The amendments and additions to the legislation include control over the circulation of weapons and administrative liability for their illegal circulation.
Despite mass vaccination campaigns, there are no grounds to think that the pandemic is to end this year. According to Sardor Umurzakov, Uzbekistan's Deputy Prime Minister, the unprecedented mobilization of public resources, including fiscal and monetary stimulus following the outbreak of the pandemic, has plunged the world economy into a virtual coma. Moreover, many of the pre-pandemic problems have been deferred to the post-pandemic period. The deterioration and volatility of world prices for basic energy and primary commodities, the imposition of restrictive measures that triggered the crisis in the air market and the tourism industry, and several other factors have led to a sharp decline in world gross product, the volume of world trade and global direct investment flows. The European Bank for Reconstruction and Development is one of the biggest lenders of Uzbekistan. Over the years, it has provided huge amounts of investments into different sectors of Uzbekistan. According to our sources, the institution is planning to hold a meeting of its shareholders in Uzbekistan. To find out more, we have invited Ms. Odile Rino Basso, the president of EBRD, to join our studio virtually. Hello, Ms. Rino Basso. Last year, EBRD set an investment record of 1.8 billion euros in Uzbekistan. Could you please give a detailed information about it? Which sectors did the investment projects cover?
So indeed, last year was an exceptional year and where we had a very high level of investment in Uzbekistan. And it's important to underline that in 2020, Uzbekistan became the largest recipient of the bank's fund in the region. And I think that we covered a number of areas. One of our key priorities is the development of the green financing and the renewable financing, because as you know, Uzbekistan has engaged and has taken some commitments in view of the decarbonization of the economy, and we have worked very closely with the government on the development of a long-term decarbonization strategy, which has been approved beginning of last year. The other kind, and I can come back to that. The other sort of financing we provided, for example, was financing to SMEs through banking. We lend some money to the banks, and themselves they lend it to small and medium-sized companies, which are very important in the country and for the country development.
Uzbekistan plans to become a carbon-neutral state by 2050. Could you talk more about the bank's role in the promotion of green energy in Uzbekistan?
So in a way, I think we have two roles, or double roles. The first one is to finance projects, because we are a bank, and so we are providing some financing for example, renewable project. And very recently, we approved the first privately owned and based on an auction mechanism renewable energy project with a bridge loan of 60 million euros for the construction of a solar photovoltaic plant, which represent 100 megawatts. So this is the first activity we are doing, financing. And the second one is to provide, have a policy discussion with the government and provide advice on the strategy for decarbonization and how the government could go about it, how to change the energy policy, how to change the legal framework, for example, developing this auction mechanism so as to be able to have more and more renewable energy to facilitate decarbonization.
And the most important question is, as our sources have told us, Uzbekistan is expected to host the meeting of EBRD shareholders in 2023. What are the expected outcomes and what is the agenda? Will it be virtual or physical?
It will be, what I'm confident about is that it will be a physical meeting. And as you know, last year and probably this year, we will have only virtual meeting. So I think it will be very good to have this physical meeting. And the annual meeting is also a very good opportunity to have exchange with the business in the countries and among business from all the countries of operation, so as to better adjust and ensure that what the bank is doing is in line with what our countries need most.
What is the scale of EBRD's assistance to Uzbekistan after the pandemic?
I mean, we expect our assistance is expected to remain quite large, and it very much depends also on the path of reform of the country. I think that the reform agenda of the country currently is ambitious, and this will help our support, I think, and our continuation of a high degree of high level of activity in Uzbekistan. So I think that we are looking forward, continuing to support the countries. It's important to note that the country is the only one in the region which has had positive growth in 2020, where all countries were very much touched by the economic impact of the pandemic and had to face recession. Uzbekistan was one of the only countries in Central Asia, but also one of the third countries among all our countries of operation that had positive growth and not negative growth. So that's a very strong outcome. And I think we are really looking forward to continue to accompany the reform agenda of the country and supporting the development of the private sector, which is at the core of the mandate of the bank. The development also of green financing. And we have also two very important priorities in overall for the bank, which is equality of opportunities, and in particular the gender agenda. And that's why we also have a program in Uzbekistan to support women entrepreneurs and women in business, which is very important to facilitate the development of women activity in the business sector. And the third priority is digitalization of the economy, and I think this is an area which is also very promising for Uzbekistan.
You are the first female leader of the EBRD. How do you feel about this? The institution you are in charge of is turning 30. What does it mean to you personally?
So first of all, being the first woman at the head of MDB, I'm proud of it. But on the other hand, I think it should be more common. So it's and I'm happy to see that now there is a number of financial institutions or economic institutions where you have women at the top, like the IMF with Kristalina Georgieva, ECB with Christine Lagarde, WTO with Ngozi Okonjo. So I think this is a signal, an important signaling effect, and it's an important change in this institution. So I think it's a very positive development. And it's also the same, when you look, for example, at the G20, so the finance ministers, you have more women and so forth. So this is a trend which is natural and should be accelerated, but an important signal. In the same vein, just let me inform you that we do the same also at the EBRD, and we promote women. And I'm happy to announce that we will have a new managing director for Central Asia, who is a woman, Susanna Haritai, and she will take her new responsibility very soon in May, and I'm sure she will do a very good job in Uzbekistan. And as far as the 30 years of the EBRD is concerned, it's a big step, because 30 years is that you're becoming, when you're for a human being, you're becoming really mature and with all your capacities and experience. So I think for the bank, it's a bit the same. We are building on our experience for our first 30 years. I think that this experience shows that our mandate is very relevant, supporting countries in transition, developing the private sector, developing market economy, and with a big objective, which are greening the economies, more equalities or more equal opportunities, and digitalization. I think this mandate is very relevant for all countries in which we operate. And I think that we are also a relatively young institution being able to adjust. When you are young, you're more agile, and I think this is the case for us, so for the bank. And I'm hoping that even if we grow older, we will keep this agility and our capacity to be very reactive to events and to provide adequate support to all the countries and to all the clients we have in the different countries.
A UK trial testing the effectiveness of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine on children and teenagers has been paused. Oxford University said on Tuesday it had put the trial on hold while it waits for more data on a possible link between the vaccine and rare blood clots. The trial's disruption is just the latest blow for AstraZeneca's vaccine, once hailed as a milestone in the fight against the pandemic. Oxford University said while there were no safety concerns in the paediatric trial, it would await guidance from the UK drugs watchdog before administering any more shots. The European Medicines Agency is expected to announce this week the results of a review into the vaccine and its potential link to an extremely rare brain blood clot known as cerebral venous sinus thrombosis. A high proportion of the reported cases were among younger women, but many experts say there's no definitive evidence yet of a particular risk for that group. The World Health Organization says it expects no changes to its assessment that the shot's benefits outweigh any risks. Dozens of countries have approved the use of the vaccine, and millions of doses of it have been safely administered around the world. However, Germany, France and the Netherlands have restricted its use to their older populations while investigations continue.
Jurors on Day 7 of the murder trial of former policeman Derek Chauvin heard from Minneapolis Police Department training coordinators on Tuesday, including its use of force instructor.
Is this a MPD authorized restraint technique?
Prosecutors tried to illustrate that Chauvin disregarded his training in the deadly arrest of George Floyd, showing their witness, Lieutenant Johnny Mersil, who teaches the proper use of force for the Minneapolis police, an image of Chauvin kneeling on the neck of the handcuffed 46-year-old.
A knee on the neck would be something that does happen in use of force that isn't unauthorized.
And under what circumstances would that be authorized? How long can you do that?
I don't know if there's a time frame. It would depend on the circumstances of the time.
Which would include what?
The type of resistance you're getting from the subject that you're putting the knee on.
And so if there was, say for example, the subject was under control and handcuffed, would this be authorized?
I would say no.
The defense tried to argue that the chaotic scene on May 25th of last year made real-time decisions extremely difficult.
Ultimately, if that person were to be handcuffed and circumstances dictated, the officer would be permitted to continue to hold his knee in that same position. Agreed?
I would say yes. However, we've cautioned officers that be mindful of the neck area and to look for the shoulder.
The MPD's crisis intervention and medical support coordinators also testified, as well as an outside use of force expert from the LAPD who said he had closely examined Chauvin's actions during the deadly arrest.
My opinion was that the force was excessive.
Chauvin has pleaded not guilty to murder and manslaughter charges for Floyd's arrest on suspicion he used a fake $20 bill to buy cigarettes.
A dangerous surge of COVID-19 deaths in Brazil means it could outpace the United States. With nearly 337,000 lives lost to the pandemic, Brazil's COVID-19 death toll only trails the U.S. But while vaccinations may help curb the U.S. outbreak, Brazil's healthcare system is overwhelmed. The country has seen record new deaths from COVID-19 every week for the past 2 months. A more contagious local variant and minimal social distancing efforts have fueled an uncontrolled outbreak. And in the last year, by one recent tally, poverty has nearly tripled as the pandemic grinds the economy down to a crawl. Marcelo Neri, director of a think tank on Brazilian development, says there needs to be more focus on vaccines.
Financial assistance is not a solution to the problem. The solution can be vaccination. As long as the vaccine does not arrive, we need solutions that allow people to comply with social distancing and stay at home.
President Jair Bolsonaro has begun embracing vaccines he once scorned, though the far-right politician continues to fight in the courts against social distancing restrictions. He's also come under rising political pressure to act. Bolsonaro responded with a dramatic shakeup of a half-dozen ministries earlier this week, putting loyalists in key roles ahead of a potentially tough re-election campaign next year against his political nemesis.
I think it is.
Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos said on Tuesday that he supports U.S. President Joe Biden's proposed tax hikes on American companies. Biden is pushing to increase corporate tax rates from 21% to 28% as part of an infrastructure plan. He also wants to close loopholes that allow companies to move profits overseas. Bezos said in a blog post on Tuesday, quote, "We support the Biden administration's focus on making bold investments in American infrastructure. We recognize this investment will require concessions from all sides." Bezos' statement of support comes after the largest U.S. online retailer faced criticism from the White House, Congress, and social media for paying little or no federal income taxes. Biden last week pointed to Amazon as one of nearly 100 Fortune 500 companies that use loopholes to pay, quote, "not a single solitary penny in federal income tax." He said in 2019 that Amazon shouldn't be paying less in taxes than firefighters and teachers. After paying no federal income tax in 2017 or 2018, Amazon reported over $160 million in tax liability for 2019 and nearly $2 billion for 2020. Bezos is stepping down as company CEO later this year.
Growing demand for smartphones and TVs looks set to drive Samsung's first quarter earnings up 44%. The South Korean tech giant forecasted January to March operating profit of 9.3 trillion won, or $8.32 billion, in line with forecasts. Analysts said Samsung's mobile division likely saw operating profits soar after its flagship Galaxy S21 smartphone series outsold the previous version by a 2-to-1 margin in the 6 weeks since its January launch. They also predict that profit in Samsung's TV and home appliance business more than doubled due to continued stay-at-home demand. In its chip division, profits are expected to fall 20% due to the cost of ramping up domestic production to meet soaring demand. Samsung has also faced losses at its Texas plant following an unprecedented storm back in mid-February. The firm is expected to ramp up investment in its chip contract manufacturing business this year to nearly $9 billion. Rival LG Electronics also announced its largest ever preliminary quarterly operating profit for Q1 on Wednesday.
These were the top headlines for today. Stay safe and goodbye.